Okay, well, I want to honor everyone's time. We're just a minute or so after the hour. We'll go ahead and get things rolling here. First, good morning or afternoon, depending on where you're joining us from. I know a lot of folks are probably feeling a little bit of fatigue with the virtual events and all the WebEx and GoToMeetings. And I just want to say thank you for taking time out of your day to join us. We want to make sure that we make this a compelling conversation. So, please, as you have questions, as we're diving into this content, please don't hesitate to ask. Um, Thank you for taking time out of your day to join us for our webinar, How to Approach Cloud Migrations with the Full Lifecycle in Mind. I'm personally very excited about this material. It's the culmination of years of work, actually, of what we're presenting today. And I hope you find the information insightful. But before we jump in today, I do want to just get a few housekeeping items out of the way. First, there will be time for Q&A at the end of the session, but please, if you've got a question that's pertinent to something as it's happening, use the chat functionality or the Q&A functionality there in your browser. And I will do my best to find opportunities to interject into the conversation and get those questions answered for you. But there will be more of a formal Q&A here at the end of the event. Secondly, I just wanted to let you know that an InterVision representative will be reaching out to you later today or early tomorrow with a recording of today's materials and also the opportunity to connect with one of our experts today. For those of you who aren't aware of who InterVision is, I see some familiar names in the list here of our attendees, but for those of you who aren't aware, InterVision is a leading strategic service provider focused on helping IT leaders transform their business through a comprehensive portfolio of technology, services, and solutions. Our expertise as an AWS Premier Consulting partner, combined with our 25-year legacy of supporting clients in their data centers, means we understand the cost benefits of cloud solutions versus legacy on-premise hardware and the challenges associated. We're in a unique position based on that experience to provide our customers with a valued and trusted guidance and approach, no matter where they are in their cloud journey. So really, InterVision has that background in data center technology and cloud technology. And a lot of that's what we're going to be talking about today is how what we're seeing out in the market and how we've developed an approach to help address some of those challenges. So today's agenda at a high level, again, we're going to be talking about cloud opportunities and the challenges associated with those opportunities, the process that we've developed for ensuring successful migrations and operations thereafter in the cloud, and the key factors that really are important to be considering as you're developing your cloud adoption strategy to ensure that you can operate efficiently and securely in the cloud. Then we're also going to be covering some use cases. And of course, we'll reserve some time here at the end to cover any questions you might have. I'd just like to introduce our speakers. John, if you want to move to the next slide. My name's Chris Cruz, and I'm the Director of Cloud Marketing here at InterVision. And today I'm joined by the real talent in the room, John Gray and Josh Famestad. John Gray is the CTO here at InterVision, and he leads the product and engineering team, the product management and development, and is a frequent host and speaker on our Status Go podcast. He shared his thought leadership and technology prowess with the team for over 14 years. Josh Famestad joined InterVision about 2 years ago, having made the transition from Accenture, where he provided technical DevOps leadership and managed various cloud architecture projects. Today, here at InterVision, Josh leads our cloud migration and automation frameworks projects. So really, John's here to kind of provide that executive level perspective, and Josh can really take a deep dive on the technology and the actual technical components of cloud adoption. So let's get right into the content here. Let's open up and talk a little bit about what's driving cloud adoption today. So I think these areas that we've highlighted here are probably pretty familiar for many of you. But John, in your conversation with clients and prospects, what are you hearing maybe that's a little bit unique to what's called out here, or specifics in what's called out here on why folks are adopting cloud today and what's driving that cloud first strategy?
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Yeah, I mean, what we're seeing more of recently, obviously with COVID, is that a lot of organizations are switching more to the cloud, or the ones that were in the cloud are really getting big benefits from it. So uh, early on, people were using it for websites and things like that, and seeing good value from it. And I think some have gotten out of data centers entirely to get into the cloud. So there's a bunch of sort of different use cases. Disaster recovery was often a sort of first place to use the cloud because people didn't have disaster recovery. Remote workforce and remote student labs and things like that are a big focus area right now. So I think cloud, most companies are using it in some shape or form. That most companies are not fully in the cloud yet, so it's a matter of how to keep moving more to the cloud as it makes sense. So cost reduction, data center consolidation, when those things can be scheduled in. So lots of different ways to do it, but seeing a lot more strategic kind of use of the cloud as opposed to tactical, I would say.
Yeah. And Josh, anything on the dev side that you see, or the agility side in particular, that's sort of driving that cloud first strategy?
Yeah, so on the development side, we really see a lot of interest in the agility that we get with the scalability and the elasticity of the cloud. So, one of the big impacts that we have pretty quick on a lot of these projects is the ability to deliver more development environments, or to be able to size the number of development environments to the current need. And so that's really one of the biggest things that we see driving people in from the development standpoint.
I mean, that's a great point. And spin environments up and shut them down, as needed. So yeah, the automation and infrastructure as code makes a lot of things really easy with the cloud that were not so easy before.
Perfect. So moving on, talking about the actual business impact. Next slide here. Folks' maturity in their cloud operations are starting to become more matured, and the benefits are really starting to crystallize. And AWS has done their research. We're seeing the impact with our clients as well. But John, can you speak a little bit to some of these business outcomes that this cloud strategy is driving?
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. Agility, operational efficiency, reduce risk. Those have always been, reasons to go to the cloud, and people seeing benefits from them. But as I was saying, with COVID hitting, what we're seeing is companies that were further into the cloud and really had embraced it have been much more able to adapt and even make gains in this period. When unfortunately others have been sort of struggling to kind of catch up. Cost savings, absolutely. We're seeing that once you sort of really start to understand how to use the cloud as an organization, you get through that initial sort of first steps, that you operate and realize that you need to focus on operational efficiency and think about it from the beginning, ideally. That's when you really start to get the cost savings. And the resiliency is there because you can replicate architectures, and you almost have to go out of your way in the cloud to not have resiliency, because the various services that make up the cloud have resiliency built into them. So if you just build your software in the cloud, it's going to be much more highly available, fault tolerant than it would have been on-prem.
Yeah, and I know that we're seeing use cases with some of our clients where they're able to spin up the environment for their remote workers in days, sometimes 24 hours or less. I know we have some specific use cases of this is having a role. Yeah.
I just got a text from AWS asking me if we could spin up an app stream environment for one of their clients, and because we've done it in a couple of days, so it's like next week we'll be hopping on that for them. So that that's the kind of turnaround we're seeing.
So I think, a lot of this is probably not necessarily new for those of you who have joined, but just kind of reiterating what we're seeing in the market in terms of those benefits and the upside that our clients are seeing from their cloud first strategies. But let's move on and talk a little bit about the challenge. So, the challenges for a cloud first organization, or a born in the cloud organization, might look different, but for most of our clients today, they're still living in a hybrid world. And there's a challenge associated along with that, right? It's a people challenge, it's a process challenge, it's a technology challenge. And one of the sources we often look to in our market research is Gartner. And I think there's a good quote here that really summarizes that even though the majority of organizations have a cloud first strategy, their budget doesn't necessarily reflect that today. And that's just the budget side, right? So, there's also the technology pieces, the diverse infrastructure and the diverse OS types, legacy applications, so on and so forth. But John or Josh, can you speak to really what this challenge looks like and how it's sort of manifesting itself with the clients that we're working with?
Well, let me start. I mean, what we're seeing is a lot of folks have got workloads in the cloud. Either IT's put them there or shadow IT. So they've got websites, they've got various things in the cloud, but not often. Often they're mainline applications, the complex Oracle apps or the ERPs and things like that are not yet in the cloud. So we're seeing stall out really in migration efforts because the work's getting more difficult, and then we see that they're now in a position where they've got to support on-prem environment and the cloud, and it's different skill sets, and that makes it challenging. So we see quite a bit of that at this point. So Josh, I'm not sure what you're seeing.
Yeah, I mean, really, it's kind of managing the complexities of making the move is something that makes a challenge, right? Because if we have a development shop, then we have development environments, and we probably have a production environment to maintain as well. And we have to manage the divergence between those as we make the move, maybe pin a release to when it'll actually go. But then there's a lot of underlying services like the databases and some of the network layer concerns that need to be dealt with. And so a lot of time we have to talk through what are we doing now in the on-premise approach, and how do we want to change the approach as we move into the cloud. And so some of those conversations take a little bit of time as we're sort of working through the details of the what works best on premise and what works best in cloud.
Perfect. Thanks, Josh. So moving on here, let's talk a little bit about what we see sort of typically play out across our clients, across this experience and this piece that is I think a real challenge for a lot of organizations as they're adopting the cloud. Is this experience piece is a big part of it, and the way it's manifesting itself is in delays, right? As you try to transition your workforce from managing an on-premise or co-location data center, or even an IaaS environment, working with a partner, transitioning into hyperscale cloud. There's a lot of real skills that are required to operate efficiently and securely in the cloud that are difficult to find, difficult to hire, and difficult to retain that talent. And another Gartner quote here that I think summarizes it well is that oftentimes the way that manifests itself is in delays, and significant delays, up to 2 years or more in the cloud migration or adoption process. But John or Josh, from your perspective, what do you see in terms of that skills gap? Is that something that's coming up a lot in your conversations as well?
Well, it's a pretty common situation, I think, for a client to have moved a couple of workloads and then, find that they're pretty well consumed with the operating load of it if they don't have a plan in place, to sort of manage it in the new environment. And so that is something that we see where we take a lot of focus on automation in the environment and getting things set up for maintainability. A lot of the time when people do start, sometimes they can get into a spot where they build a system that's much more difficult to maintain.
And on the security side, I mean, I know cloud security is top of mind for everyone. John, is there kind of anything you could add there to sort of some of the challenges you're seeing?
Yeah, I mean, I think what we're seeing is that a lot of organizations are still trying to make their data center kind of the hub of the security, but as more and more workloads get into the cloud, that becomes less viable. So, the newer approach is, the sort of SASE approach, which is security at the edge. So the cloud now becomes the center of security, and that is a very different paradigm. So that's really, why we're seeing. Actually, let me jump to the next slide here. The order of operation, or the order of things that we've seen quite often, is that folks are getting into the cloud, deploying some workloads, seeing some success, and then really, and this is not the best way to do it, and people learn this over time. Then they're figuring out how to operate in the cloud. Then it's not that they haven't secured their workloads, but then they figure out there's a better way to secure them. And then they start to really realize, okay, we're not seeing all the cost savings we sort of expected to see. We need to do some optimization. We need to do some refactoring, things like that. So the security side of things is really one of the areas that is really quite different and is, a different paradigm, and it makes people uncomfortable. And we'll talk more about that a little later on how we help in that area. But so I don't know if there's Chris,
John,
if
that's
you had points you want to hit on this one.
Yeah, I think that's just a great point. That really what we're trying to represent here is what we see typically happen for folks as they're adopting cloud. That these things kind of come in sequential order where the pressure starts to manifest, and really what we're advising and what we'll talk about more is trying to think holistically about that entire life cycle before you start migrating a single application. Or perhaps, if you're stalled in your migration, how can you take a step back and start considering, what's it going to take to operate once we've made that migration? How do we do it securely? How do we do it efficiently and cost effectively? So I think that's segues nicely into the next slide, actually. Part of what my responsibility in this organization is to go out and do that field research, have interviews with clients, with IT leaders that we're talking to understand how are they tackling these issues. And one of the things that we're seeing consistently for those folks who are very matured in the cloud and who are operating efficiently and effectively, they sort of look at things in three key areas, and they do that whenever they take on a new project for cloud. And some of this may not be new at all, but I think it's a way of kind of understanding before you take on any cloud project, really clearly understanding, financially, what's the financial impact going to be? What's the total cost of ownership for this versus, an on-premise solution? The security component, right? How will we maintain the security and compliance controls that need to be in place once we've migrated this to hyperscale cloud? And then the big one, which I think is the one that seems to trip a lot of folks up, is once it's in the cloud, how do we operate efficiently? And again, as we've talked to folks who are far along in their process, they tend to have a very similar way of thinking through this. It may look a little different, maybe worded slightly different, but there's a lot of consistency in what folks have learned as they've gone further and further into their cloud adoption. And it's really this sort of this holistic approach. And John, I don't know if there's anything you want to add, but really what we wanted to talk about today is the approach that we've put together that we'd like to share with you, share what we've learned, share how we approach cloud adoption. And really a comprehensive perspective on not only that application migration project, but the full life cycle thereafter.
Well, yeah, you've already hit on it, Chris. I think a lot of what we're seeing, you're realizing, is if we have the discussions up front around operations and even optimization before we sort of push on with migration or with more migrations, things work out better. So that's really a lot of the understanding the life cycle, right, that we've learned over the last 5, 6, 7 years, however long we've been, doing these migrations. That it's if we can really make sure that we in the organization we're working with and for are set up for the operations. The migrations go more smoothly. You continue the velocity of the migrations. And then if you've kind of built in the optimizations into that process, so sort of the move and improve approach, then you don't get big cost overruns. You're making the necessary optimization tweaks as you go. Things keep moving.
Yeah, thanks, John. And really what we're sharing here is our approach. We call it Cloud Migration Lifecycle Assurance. And we're going to walk through that today to really try to share insights to how we approach cloud adoption that might be transferable to you, or for those of you who want to learn more about our approach and potentially how we might be able to help your organization. That's what we're going to be talking about here in the next few slides. But CMLA is really designed to be that comprehensive perspective on, again, not just the migration process, not just the analysis beforehand, but the full life cycle, all the way through to that matured, optimized operational state that, I think we all want to get to. And so at the highest level, this process is really designed to analyze what the environment currently looks like, understand what the total cost of ownership is going to be, do the discovery, and then these cloud adoption workshops, which we'll talk about later, which are really designed to set the table for folks who want to bring their own technologies into the cloud, whether that be firewalls or other security technologies. What's the trade-off versus a cloud native? For some instances, it makes sense to bring that technology in, and some use cases it might not, because it may cause delays or issues down the line. But it's really about having that more mature discussion earlier on in the process so that things can be built to operate, as opposed to just getting the migration in place and getting things into the cloud and then having to worry about how do you secure it and how do you operate it efficiently. But John, you were a key player in sort of putting this approach together. At the high level here, what are some of the key things that folks might be able to transfer as they're thinking about their cloud adoption lifecycle that we've put together in the CMLA approach?
Well, this obviously goes left to right, like a whole bunch of approaches and methodologies. But what we start talking with folks about is the operations and the optimization up front. So that's where, we're selecting the management model, talking to them about that. Do they need help managing it for the first year? And then, we would then, go away. So it's sort of a co-managed approach. Are they going to self-manage it? Do they want a fully managed approach with, AWS's managed approach, or what is it they want? Because that will actually, in some cases, make changes to the architecture and the approach we use for migration. So by having those conversations up front, it's a little bit of, you go a little slower at the beginning to then pick up a lot of speed along the way. So, once you make those key decisions, then a lot of things just drop into place. And, Josh and our team of engineers have a lot of, pre-built, questionnaires and processes, and then automation around building out landing zones and all those kinds of things for the different types of scenarios. So once we make those key decisions with the client, a lot of it then is, much more sort of follow the recipe book, right? Mm-hmm. So Josh, you've got experience in various these areas. You want to add anything here?
Yeah, so basically we've just kind of got the phases aligned up to just kind of help us understand the, discovery and analysis, where we just really were focused on figuring out what it is and what we're trying to move. And then we move, kind of forward into planning how we move these things, and, what sorts of an approach that we're going to take for each of the workloads. And then the foundational build is really about that landing zone and deploying the foundational account features. And then we can start migrating and, looking at optimizing the operations from there.
So yeah, thanks, Josh. What we try to do, and what I encourage our teams to do, is really sort of come in and talk with the client, ask some smart questions, try to figure out as quickly as we can kind of where they're at, what their business is, what's important to them, understand the triggers for why they're moving what they're moving. So we align with them, right? And then figure out how best to tailor this approach to them so that we can then, go as fast as they want to go, or, support them in the right way, right? So it's very much a team effort as needed here, to get the client where they want to go, right? So lots of automation, pre-built components that our team has and are building all the time. So.
And we talked a little bit about how we understand the preferred operational model early on. You can see that kind of that last component of the discovery and analysis phase is that I think so many folks feel like they work with the provider and they have to go in it alone once it's time to actually operate in the cloud. And there are options out there. AWS has a managed service that we've actually partnered with AWS, and we deliver a managed service for cloud operations and infrastructure. There's also co-managed options where a partner like InterVision can come in and help support you along the way. But the key piece is to be thinking about those things in advance before, you're actually in the cloud, and then you've got to figure it out once you're operating there.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and this approach works really whether it's somebody who's got really nothing in the cloud, which is very few at this point, or whether you've got a bunch of workloads in the cloud. We sort of adapt the process to what's needed. We've done on-prem to cloud migrations, we've done Azure to AWS migrations, whatever it is, it's this sort of similar approach that pushes us through. And we're very much, we've got processes that are very well defined, and we sort of take this input, process, output approach to everything. So we're always sort of driving the work forward. In as much as we can bring forward recommended approaches for our clients, we will do that. We're not going to spend a bunch of time sitting around sort of hypothesizing over what might be the most, the coolest way to do something. We're going to look at the factors in play and bring forward recommendations, and then, listen for why the client may want to do things differently. But as much as we can, we've got a sense of urgency from the beginning that will push the work along.
And Josh, I'm going to turn things over to you here for this next slide. But another key factor in this is understanding what migration approach will be taken for each application as it makes sense. And most cloud adoption life cycles are going to have all of these approaches potentially as part of them. But Josh, I wonder if you could talk a little bit to the trade-offs and kind of what might decide whether an application might be relocated or replatformed or even refactored as part of the project.
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of the time, the decision of the approach for an application really drives the amount of effort and time it takes to migrate the application, and it also has a really big effect on the long-term maintenance and cost to run it. And so a lot of the time, it ends up being a balance between kind of that time, cost, and agility, with relocating or rehosting an application being a lot more towards the easy side, where we can move it quickly, maybe with like a block level migration, get the client up and running in the cloud. But then we have more sophisticated approaches like a refactor, where we'll consider using cloud native features. Maybe we're going to use S3 for some object storage. Maybe we can refactor to use some managed database or other technologies to really make for a more efficient operations, and maybe even to have a more cost efficient setup. So as we move into those sorts of things, they take a little bit more time up front in the planning and in designing how we'll actually perform the migration and build the application. But we can get dividends on that in the long-term cost to run it and in hosting.
Great. Thanks, Josh. John, I don't know if you had anything to add here, but another key thing that we talked about is understanding kind of these different operational models, right? Many folks are in a self-managed mode where they've got to come along and figure these elements out on their own. But John, I don't know if you want to speak to any of these operational or optimization components that are typical of what we see required as a cloud adoption sort of life cycle.
Yeah, and I mean this sort of matrix here really reflects what I was saying, how we try to line up with the client in how we can best help them. Right? If they want to be self-managed, we're good with that. So basically we do the migration project, with their support, and then they take on the operations. We can then help with optimization as needed. We do a bunch of training to get the, pass things over to them. In the co-managed, it's much more of a sort of, again, we do the migration, but then we can provide ongoing management and operations support and various things that are shown there in the operational part of that. And then optimizations, we can provide that as well. So, we can provide it for a year or 6 months or whatever the client wants, or we can continue to be involved. And then the fully managed offering is where we're providing, AMS, which is Amazon's managed service, which is a much more sort of rigorous approach to controlling an environment. It's particularly applicable to organizations that have really heavy compliance, because the environment is highly secure, meets all the various certifications, like HIPAA and things like that. So or if the organization just purely does not want to be involved with any sort of operational support. So we are constantly sort of evolving our offerings in these areas. So, building things out to meet with the market. We spend a lot of time meeting with Gartner and folks like that who are out there talking to, thousands of organizations to determine what the organizations need. So obviously we try to best adapt ourselves to the market, and this is sort of how we look at things.
Great, thanks, guys. And John or Josh, I'll ask a question here. Is there anything that you look for as factors to kind of understand whether a client might be best in a self-managed or co-managed model, or maybe a fully managed model?
Yeah, I'll start on that answer. Josh probably have some points to add. It's, like I said, if they've got very heavy compliance needs, they're in an industry that, banking or healthcare or things like that, then I'd lead more towards the fully managed option. If also if they do not have much in the way of operational staff, or they're completely overburdened, with their current workloads, again, I'd look more at the fully managed. If we're working with a client that's much more sort of born in the cloud or an early adopter, then we may be just helping finish some migrations they hadn't gotten to. So that's more on the self-managed. Co-managed is obviously somewhere in between that, and I think this is probably where the market is going to some degree. So lots of variables involved, and we can really sort of fit to what clients need. So Josh, I'm not sure what you've seen recently.
Well, I think that covers the big ones. I think I kind of look first to the fully managed, like you said, in a highly governed or compliance-centric environment, because that really gives us, just direct access to that ITIL framework to manage the environment, manage change in the environment. And, it's really a very quick, simple way to set up, a very controlled environment. For the co-managed and self-managed, just sort of getting into those and understanding where they need to be and how much help they actually need. We have had some clients who have asked for some ongoing support models, and so that can, tend towards something with a little bit more of an ongoing relationship.
Great, thanks, Josh. I think we keep things moving here. So, really what we've tried to do with this approach is really address that hybrid reality that many of our clients are living in. And, we feel that we are uniquely qualified to deliver on that based on our legacy, supporting clients in their data center. And also, the hundreds of thousands of hours that we've delivered cloud professional services in our qualifications with AWS, where we have competencies directly from AWS in migration, DevOps, storage, end user computing, which is the remote workforce enablement piece. And then we also have this unique offering with AMS by InterVision, which is the AWS managed service that we can roll our clients into so that they can essentially offload all the operational burden of maintaining their cloud infrastructure to us, while they can focus more on the differentiators that will help them be competitive in the market. But really, what we try to do is help folks that are in that hybrid reality and adopting cloud, and we've developed this CMLA approach to do just that. John, I know you've mentioned in the past how you see this play out with clients where maybe they have their data center and infrastructure managers, and we help bring them along in this process and help transition their skill set. Any kind of particular instances or examples of that you'd want to call out?
As far as how we're bringing folks along, basically, I think, if we've, for example, done a lot of work with Palo Alto, we've done a lot of work with automation around Palo Alto's appliances in the cloud, but we also have a lot of skill with them on-prem. So we'll bring in our team that has, the Palo Alto experience, start talking with the on-prem expertise on the client side, and develop that relationship, and then that helps them then understand what's going on in the cloud, which in some ways is quite different, but has some similarities. So that's where I think we're able to almost uniquely help. We're currently working with Cisco to help them actually bring some of their cloud offerings and create AWS quick starts and things like that. So we're working directly with some of these companies to, make their offerings ready or more ready for the cloud. We've done it with NetApp. We've got automation around Okta's solutions. So yeah, we do quite a lot of work with these vendors directly, which is then helpful when we get into a lot of clients where they've got on-prem skills, but not necessarily cloud skills with these tools. So I think that's how we're able to kind of move things forward.
Great, thanks, John. We're a little over halfway here, so we can go ahead and keep things moving. The next bit that we wanted to talk about is sort of how we start this approach. There's lots of different entry points for kind of getting into this CMLA approach. It could be an optimization project or a security review or analysis, but revisiting this high-level approach, we're going to dive in a little bit more to what our discovery and analysis process looks like. Because I think there's some transferable sort of knowledge that you can take on as you're building out your cloud journey plan, your cloud first strategy. But John, for each phase of our CMLA approach, we've got these inputs, the process we go through on behalf of the client, and then the outputs. Can you, for this discovery and analysis phase, talk a little bit more to that?
Yeah, I mean, everything we do, we follow this sort of basic approach, right? It's something I've done for decades in the software business, right? We're going through a particular phase. Well, what are our inputs? What outputs do we want from that? So therefore, what's the process in the middle? So we take the same approach, right? So we meet with clients, we look for available documentation, whether they can provide us, so we can get up to speed quickly with that. We've got our own kinds of, detailed questionnaires and interview notes that we use that we've tailored, picked up, over the years. And then we're looking for information around the workload, the apps, as quickly as we can get it. We seek to understand their overall business so that we can really quickly get to become smart. As we move through the process, we're doing things like total cost of ownership, and then we get out from this phase a lot of things that then sort of provide the support for the rest of the work. And can be used within the organization by the client. So if you've got certain stakeholders who need the total cost of ownership support report, they can then go review that, or with our help with the rest of their team. So there's a lot of sort of foundational work we do here, and this can happen pretty quickly, with an organization, particularly if they're already, quite often there's pieces of this already done with a lot of organizations. So, and we use tools listed down there at the bottom. If we can, put in Cloud Chomp to do analysis of workloads, that gives us a ton of good information pretty quickly. So, there's lots we can do here, and we've got a team that's done this many times.
Yeah, thanks, John. And the next bit here, I think that could be transferable as well, is this concept of these cloud workshops, which is the next slide here. And I'd like to just kind of at a high level touch on these and what the spirit of these are designed to do, which is really get those conversations started in the right areas before the work starts, so that, like you said, John, so that, it may be a little slower to begin, but once these things are answered for, things can move along a lot more efficiently.
Yeah. And I mean, Chris, how these sort of came about was us kind of being part of some of the pre-sales work that some of our sales folks were doing, and telling us, this client is really ready to go, except their security guys just don't get it. They're really sort of slowing things down because they're insecure about it, or about how to move to the cloud. So what we found was, by putting these workshops together, and bringing them in as needed, is a lot of clients don't need all of them, but it can really sort of help get people to the same, certain baseline of understanding that then helps with everything moving forward.
Thanks for that, John. And Josh, I know that DevOps is close and dear to your heart. Is there anything kind of specifically on that side that you wanted to touch on that's kind of part of what should be considered?
Yeah, I mean, really what we're trying to do there is that, we believe that running a cloud environment is different than running an environment on-prem. And so in the DevOps workshop, it's really my chance to show you how. So we introduce some of the automation technologies. We'll show some of the AWS native DevOps products. And then we also have a couple of vendors that we like as well, like HashiCorp, where we introduce some of their products and show how those can help manage their cloud effectively as well.
Great, thanks, Josh. So really, we've kind of talked a little bit about how we start these processes. Again, there's multiple entry points, but let's talk a little bit now about actual practical use cases, where the rubber really meets the road and how we've been able to take this approach and deliver for some of our clients. John, I know that you've been fairly involved in both of these use cases. If you want to speak to these at a high level, please feel free.
Yeah, this was a project we did for a California community college down south in California, Ventura, where we helped them migrate quite a variety of workloads into AWS. They had an ERP called Banner 9 that they were wanting to move into the cloud. That required a combination of rehosting, replatform, and refactor, because this is an ERP that had many components to it. Big Oracle database server that we basically replatformed. It had a job server, I think, that still had some COBOL code in it that we rehosted over. And then a whole bunch of pieces that were more modern that we worked with them to containerize and got that into a really, pretty modern, leading edge containerized deployment. We also implemented, into this new relic for monitoring and implemented single sign-on. So a whole bunch of things, across, I don't know, a year and a half, to get them into a point where they've now got, zero downtime deployments, auto scaling, they're saving plenty of money, and a really now looking to come back and modernize some of the pieces that they weren't able to modernize initially. They're coming back around and doing, more there. We developed some pretty slick DevOps pipelines with them. So, and these guys are one of the, really at this point, they're self-managed. So we were co-managing for a while, but they're pretty leading edge with their team. So it's an example where we came in, helped them a lot. I think they were pretty surprised, and at the end they were like, wow, we didn't realize how much we didn't know. We thought we knew a lot, but we're so happy we sort of engaged with you guys because you were there to kind of help us when we ran into issues. And so it's an example of working with a customer that was pretty savvy at the beginning, but now is really doing some great things. So the other case study we've got here is a client we've been working with, which is the Community Colleges Tech Center. We've been working with them for I think 5+ years. I've done a whole bunch of things for them, and this is an example really of how we as an organization evolve with a client and provide them what they need. We started out many years ago doing sort of initial architecture with them. They had a number of things already in the cloud, but the architecture wasn't very good, so we kind of came in and helped them clean that up. We did migration of their main application, which was a massive application with a very odd architecture, into the cloud, and it's still in need of refactoring, but it's been running solidly. We were just talking about this the other day. We've had it there for about 5 years and really experienced, no downtime. In those 5 years, there was one AWS S3 outage that prevented access to files, but the application was still running. So when you kind of look at the resiliency of that across 5 years, it's pretty amazing. They've got, I think 1,000 EC2 instances, so it's pretty large, although the number of instances is now actually going down because we're doing a lot of work with them to containerize. So that actually removes EC2, virtual servers, and puts things into containers. We're now doing a lot of work with them around some of the new AWS security services, trying to take full advantage of those. So that's one of the things about cloud is it is changing at a relentless pace. So if you implement today and get everything over, then by the time you're done, there's more that you can do because there's new services out that you can now use to a greater advantage. We did data lake and machine learning to prevent fraud for these guys, and are now adding to that. So there's great example of how you can leverage and then continue to improve once you get into the cloud.
Great, thanks, John. So in closing here, just a few more things to touch on, and then we can turn things over for Q&A. Is really talk a little bit about why we put CMLA together and what this approach is really designed to deliver on. At the end of the day, we're trying to solve for that challenge that many of our clients are facing in this hybrid cloud adoption. That isn't to say that we can't support organizations that are cloud first, but that's really the key challenge that we're trying to help solve for. And we've combined our experience again in the data center with our experience with AWS in the cloud to ensure that your migrations won't be stalled by that legacy infrastructure, by that, the operational things that still need to happen to keep your data center on and running. We're accustomed to that. We're accustomed to the technology. We're accustomed to talking that language, and we can help bring you along in that journey. As of today, we're the only North American provider that has partnered with AWS to deliver the AMS offering, which is AWS's managed service. So for folks who are looking to kind of turn over their infrastructure operations in the cloud to a managed service provider, we're on a very, very short list today of folks who can actually partner with AWS to deliver that. We also have a deep list of strategic partners in data center and cloud that can, ensure an integrated approach for you in your cloud adoption lifecycle and really help circumvent some of those challenges we talked about earlier. And then ultimately, as we've walked through today, we have a very prescriptive approach that's tailored on standard, right? So we can quickly find out where the unique elements are in your sort of cloud strategy and account for those instead of having to invent everything whole cloth, which with each adoption or with each project we work on. So, we're an AWS Premier Consulting partner. We have the competencies and migration and others to help kind of support that full cloud lifecycle for you. But really, those are the key reasons why we put the CMLA approach together. John, I don't know if there's anything else, you were obviously critical in putting that approach together that you wanted to touch on there.
No, I think you've hit everything, Chris. I mean, it's been a lot of work, and we continue to refine it, to evolve it from things we learn in the field, every month. So,
great. So so the last thing I wanted to touch on before I'll turn it over to the conversation Q&A section here is we have a very unique offer right now to build out AWS landing zone at no cost to you as the client. So what is the landing zone? It's essentially the environment that you're going to be migrating into. And, this is a very unique offering that we're actually putting up to 145 hours of our AWS certified engineer time to build that out for you based on what we learn in that discovery and analysis phase. And John or Josh, I don't know if you want to speak to sort of what does that AWS landing zone piece look like, and what are some of the benefits of having that built out in this approach?
I'll let Josh take that one because he's near and dear.
Yeah, so we build our landing zones with AWS Control Tower, which is an automated product from AWS. It helps us ensure that each landing zone is implemented with best practices. So it helps us set up the organizational units in AWS organizations so that we can apply the right guardrails and governance onto each of the accounts that we create with the account factory that's created by Control Tower as well. And then there's a number of guardrails that we can put in place on the account to set up AWS config rules and other sorts of things to run some automated checks, like watching our S3 buckets or our other configurations for things that might be excessively open. So it really gives us a very nice best practices, governed and standardized AWS environment to start deploying workloads into.
Great, thanks, Josh. And from my perspective, we see a lot of organizations out there that offer a free assessment and essentially just give you the book of work that you've got to go deliver on your own. And what we've tried to do here is really deliver something substantial as part of this offering. And so again, if you've got a question about that, or you would like to talk to one of us, we will have an InterVision representative reaching out to you. You can also, John, if you want to go to the next slide here, you can contact us at any time. We are very prompt to respond at intervision.com/contact. You fill out that form there, and Deborah Hatfield will reach out to you right away and get the conversation started, and you can pursue things. So with all that said, I'd like to turn it over to the audience for any questions you might have. I do have one here that I wanted to get out for either John or Josh. For if we already have some applications running in AWS, where's the process to start with something like this, right? So they're already in their cloud journey, it sounds like, and what are some entry points?
Well, I mean, what we would do there in some shape or form is come in and certainly recommend this is how we do it. Look at your existing AWS environment to understand, how you've gone about that. And, if it's something you're very happy with and whatever, then we're not going to, recommend you change it. We just need to understand it so that we understand essentially what is your landing zone, where you're migrating to. And then obviously then also look at the workloads, the applications that remain that need to be migrated, and then talk through how, the options are once digging in and understanding those, and depending on whether you've got a handful or if you've got hundreds, we're going to want to run a tool like CloudChomp rather than look at them manually. But we can use a combination of tools, manual assessments to understand, or documentation you have, understand what the workloads are, which workloads are depending on each other, what other constraints and triggers there may be. Are you trying to get out of a data center, contract or something that's driving, a migration? Therefore, if you've got, date to hit, migrate it as rehost maybe, or if you've got existing workloads that have big performance issues, then we'd consider refactoring first. So talking through, learning, and then talking through those options, I think is, the way we would go about it.
Perfect. So what about at a high level, what are some things to look for when trying to reduce spend?
Well, expanding in the cloud, certainly unused devices, oversized, things that are sitting on expensive form, the cloud's cheaper, but things that are sitting on more expensive forms of storage. So if you've got things in S3, if you can put them down to a lesser expensive version of S3 or into Glacier, you can, save a lot of money there. Ultimately, if you're using a lot of compute and you've got sort of older style applications, starting to look at containerization or microservices or serverless, that sort of approach takes longer, but you end up with something both more agile and it's much more cost effective. So there's lots of options, and we've got the ability to come in and sort of pretty quickly give you a readout on where we can save you this much money up front, and then we can do these other things over time that will get you additional savings. So lots of options there.
Yeah, and for folks who are maybe along their cloud adoption lifecycle, that's another potential way that we can jump into the conversation, is just looking and seeing, just talking
Absolutely.
specifically about cost optimization. Yeah. So 2 more questions came in actually. One was about, will slides be available? So when Deborah reaches out to you, probably be early tomorrow, just request that we send along the slides and we can get those along to you. The other one is a little bit more specific to our approach. How do you handle clients that have other legacy platforms, iSeries, AIX, that also need to be addressed?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question, because there's not a straight path, obviously, iSeries, AS400, AIX, and whatever. So we would come in and we work to understand what the workloads are, and what's the best path forward is for you. There are some vendors out there that will support those in the cloud, sort of software as a service, but they're pretty niche. So that's probably not something we would recommend. So it is, most likely going to involve some refactoring of those workloads. Josh, I'm not sure if you've, got experience around AIX or iSeries.
I don't know AIX or iSeries well at all. I would just maybe mention here that, one of the migration R's is to retain, right? And so sometimes There are things that get left behind, don't make sense to me. And we have done some things to help clients with that, right? Like setting up maybe AppStream to provide access to a service that's provided in the data center. And sometimes there's other ways that we take a look at these kind of specialized workloads. That's kind of
we can, you know, I've actually spent part of my life working on AIX, installing AIX, and developing, you know, large suites of applications on that platform. Yeah, those applications, you know, you can look at how you can migrate components into, you know, Linux. You can look at how you can pick pieces off potentially, as Josh is saying, and, you know, maybe some is retained and you move certain components over. Certainly we need more time we need time to come in and dig in and understand the architecture and, you know, which pieces potentially could be moved. Can you pull it apart, you know, on a service-based approach? You know, lots of options, but certainly, you know, those are the more complex types of migrations, and that's, you know, where we're seeing that, you know, people have made a lot of gains on the simpler things and now are dealing with those. So we can absolutely help.
Great. Thanks, John. Well, I'm not seeing any other questions come in. And again, you know, I know that we're all probably feeling a little fatigued from all the virtual events and the virtual meetings. So I do sincerely appreciate everyone who's taken time out of their day to join us here today. We will be providing the recording and the opportunity to reach out to one of our experts to continue the conversation if you found today's material compelling. But thanks again, and thank you, John and Josh. Always appreciate you guys having here with us.
Thanks, Chris.
Talk soon.
Yep.